Welcome back, Freelancers Undefeated Rescue, and we're continuing the gear showcase videos. Today we're on the Ranger. We'll go ahead, jump out into replay, and get to it. Okay. Nice, we got the brutes loading in. Alright, so, just in case anyone's curious too, we are in GM1. We always start here, but I'll start showing this screen so we have a general idea where we're at. Let's see here, the Forge. So back in the Ranger, and we're continuing with the assault launchers. We've gone over pretty much everything. I think we only have a couple left. So today we're going over Avenger's Boon. So Avenger's Boon is an upgraded Pulse Blast. Combo effect is Impact because it's the Ranger. And then Striker's Strength is the Masterworks perk. Now, hitting an enemy increases melee damage by 220% for 20 seconds. The damage is approximately 9,000, and then the recharge is 5. Not a bad recharge. That's pretty decent for most of the gear in here. It's pretty average. It's not the highest. It's not really the lowest. So, it's kind of in between. Nothing special about it. Now, this little symbol here is supposed to indicate that it does a lot more damage towards shields. But from my experience with this, and we'll showcase it, it really doesn't seem like it has that much more of an impact than just about anything else. So I've got a little bit of extra damage on here, so that's something you're going to take into consideration. My other one has more damage, so I want to stick with this one that has the least amount of damage. And then I got a good amount of charges on it, so that way the numbers won't be skewed too much. And then just to give you a general idea, pretty much all my components that I'm running have either a ton of armor. It's got a little bit of damage, gear damage on it, but mostly just armor and alt speed, so I can get those back. Same with the weapons. The weapons are really stacked towards getting recharges and armor. So I'm not trying to do anything crazy here with the gear that I'm showing off. And pretty much the same with this. So this is kind of like going forward. These are going to be my test builds for all the javelins. So hopefully the numbers will be as realistic as possible for anybody who's watching these. Okay. So Avenger Boon. So I'm expecting to take this brute down pretty much in one shot in GM1. So it didn't. That's interesting. However, if you look on the left-hand screen where it says cooled, right below it says Striker's Strength. So now I should have a ton of melee damage. Yeah. That's interesting, GM1. So on its own, the outlook is not too good, right? It's not even taking down a brute with one shot, which most everything we've used kind of does that. So we'll see how it works against everyone in the dungeons. Alright. Okay. Let's grab this real quick and we'll head in. Alright, so while they load in, my expectations are it will take down the grunts, these guys, pretty easily. But I think once we get to other javelin types or armored enemies, we might have a little bit more difficulty. But let's go in. Okay, yeah, that's a little bit better. So it doesn't do very good against armor. So I'm wondering if because it has a shield icon, if that specifically means it does a lot more damage against shields, but a lot less against armor. Oh. So there is a little bit of a charge up to it, where I don't think there's only a couple other gear components that the Ranger has where they have to like really charge it up. So a good indicator, in case you're not familiar with the charge up gear pieces, is, well, let's test this on this shield real quick, is you want to wait till you see when you're charging it up. Yeah, it does a lot against the shield actually. When you're charging it up, you see how it kind of has to build. If you let off at any time during that charge up phase, and then there's kind of like this cooldown on the back end, you can't just instantly like spam it. You see I'm like trying to. You want to wait till it's like got that yellowish glow to the bar, that means it's charged and it's ready to go. Because if you let go, like even a decimal of a second before that, like you see how like it just started to turn yellow, and it didn't shoot. So you have to wait for it to kind of like fluctuate like that for like at least 1 second or whatever. The timing's kind of weird. I think latency has a lot to do with it too. So you might see different things on your end. Alright, let's test it against their shield. So, okay, it's definitely doing a lot more damage against shielded, or appearing to be doing a lot more damage against shielded enemies, which means it's going to do less damage against armored enemies. And you can kind of see that too from just watching. So I'm curious how it'll do against the Ranger Javelin GM1. Because remember, we were seeing with the Brutes, it took like 2 to 3 to take them down, and they were armored. They didn't have shields, so. And then I want to see how effective it'll be against a shielded Elementalist in GM3 too. So, we haven't even really showcased the Masterwork perk, and I'll go over that more in GM3 because right here, because we're just taking them down easily. Oh, with the Avenger's Boon on its own. It's not gonna. Okay, so here's an armored enemy. I want to show it against them real quick. So it's gonna take about 2 to get them down. Let me see if distance has anything to play with it. It just keeps running at me. That was a mess up on my part. I'm trying to create some distance to see if it loses damage over distance. No, it seems to be pretty decent at close range and medium range. Doesn't seem to be any drop off. See if I can get on the other side and hit them, and if it affects it there. No, it seems to be pretty standard across the board, so that's good. Alright, we'll clean out the rest of these grunts, and then we'll go one-on-one with the Ranger Javelin. Actually, I think they're the only one left, so. Alright. So it takes down their shield instantly, and does a little bit of damage against them. Let's see what it does against, but it's not doing hardly anything against their armor. So that's what I'm seeing in GM1. I'm pretty sure it'll translate over in GM3, almost exactly. Probably do a lot less damage against their armor. Possibly their shield as well. I'm curious if GM3 if it'll take. I don't think it'll take down their shield all the way, but we'll test it out. Okay, so let's go over some notes real quick with this. Very effective in GM1. Most everything from GM1 down is very effective. And you can see that the Striker's Strength is just now getting ready to disappear. The perk lasts for a while, so the way you're gonna want to try and use this, if you're trying to, okay. It's a detonator, so it's going to be usable with just about anything. If you notice, I really don't have a primer. I do have a weapon that's a primer, and that's kind of the reason I've got this on to showcase in GM3 because I'm going to need it. But we'll go into GM3 because I don't want to get too far into details. So we'll head into GM3 and kind of go over, or kind of showcase how it works. Okay, so we'll set up over here. I'll go over the gear a little bit more. So, tracking, we are in GM3. Alright, so, no brutes. That sucks, because I'd really like to have tested them to see how much more tankier they are in comparison versus Avenger's Boon. But we'll go in and show it off. So, we are now in GM3. So, the thing with Avenger's Boon is, my expectations are it's not going to do very good in GM3. It could surprise me, but I usually do about a week's worth of testing with the different builds before I do gear showcases with them. So, I kind of have a general idea how it should work. And I mostly do it to test in strongholds and things like that. just to get a general idea, because I go up against a lot of different enemy types, and that way I bring that knowledge into here. Okay, so as far as I don't think it's going to take them down immediately. And just so you understand, like Avengers Boon's Masterwork perk, Striker's Strength, when you hit an enemy with Avengers Boon, so basically when you use the Pulse Blast and you hit them with it, it should proc the Strider's Strength, or basically it should give you increased melee damage for 20 seconds up to 220%. The thing is, it only applies to melee damage. It does not apply to weapon damage. I've tested it a bunch. It's only good for melee damage. I know some of those kind of go back and forth, but it's really anything that says weapon damage applies to melee. It doesn't work the other way around. If it says melee, it only applies to melee, unfortunately. I really wish that would have gone both ways, because it would have had a lot more interesting builds. But I'm also going to show you at the end of the video kind of what my concerns are about it, but we'll go in and showcase it. So GM3 going up against grunts, and it did about a third. So this is pretty typical when we're going from GM1 to GM3 with something that doesn't have anything special. It is a detonator, so I can go ahead and oh shoot, I can go ahead and prime them, and then it pretty much does what any other priming detonating system does. It takes them down pretty easily. So I had them down to about a third, and it took them, or typically on its own, it'll only do a third damage. Like I showcased there, when you prime them and then hit them again, it'll do about 2/3 damage on its own. It might be doing more. It's doing over 100,000 damage on it just because it's combo. So it definitely has some viability there. But on its own, going up against like the grunts, like it's not very good. But we'll test it against some shielded enemies. So completely took down their shield and did some damage. And then now if their shield's down, we can prime them and take them out like that. So let's try it again on shielded enemy. Yep, shield's completely gone. But it's struggling with like just normal enemy health. Yeah, so not going to be good if it's like your primary source of damage. You're gonna really need a primer. You're really gonna have to. I really insist that you utilize the detonating priming system if you're gonna make a build around Avengers Boon, because this is it's not doing too good on its own. So here's a good thing with the fact that it's melee. This is how I've been kind of using it. You can use the shock mace, which should prime the enemies once you hit them on melee, and then hit them with Avenger's Boon, and then you can kind of come back and melee them again, and your melee should be doing 220% additional damage. So come in, melee them, get Strider's Strength, and then if they were still alive, you could melee them again. And then now this melee for Strider's Strength is up for 20 additional seconds, so you can kind of just go around spamming your melee, priming all of them, and then you can just go around and detonate them. So you pretty much have forever Strider's Strength because it lasts for so long. It's kind of like a neat little going back and forth to keep up Strider's Strength. Now, if it applied to weapons damage, this could be really, really... Actually, if it applied to, like, all types of damage, it could be really, really interesting. Oh, frozen. Gotta back out a little bit. Uh-oh. Come on. There we go. Is this, yes it is. So this is an armored enemy. Let's test it against them. Yeah, it's pretty much kind of like with what it would have been against the brutes. It's just taking a little bit of health off. But if we prime them, it's a bit more efficient. Does a lot more damage, but we're still only seeing about 100,000 damage, which isn't bad numbers. It's just not very high numbers. I'm not being patient enough. That's the thing with these charge-up types of gear pieces. You have to be very patient with them. Or you just have to get the timing perfect. Okay, so... Prime them, detonate them. Yeah, so we're only seeing about 150 damage. But I don't think in GM3 you're going to be able to take down a lot of enemies with just Avenger's Boon on its own. Where with Argo's Mace, it was just, at least the one I had, was just strong enough that I was getting away with the charges and the damage that I had on it to actually be able to kill a lot of enemies. It struggled, but not by too much. Alright, so we'll go for shield again. So it's really good at taking shields down. But the thing is, Argo's Mace, when it's not going up against Electric Elementalist, is also very good at taking shields down too. So... So like right there, I took down their shield just with the mace. So, okay, the shield. Well, let's give their shield a second to come back because I want to show off how this is gonna work. So, shield is completely back. It didn't even fully take down the Elementalist's shield. So, if they have any type of real resistance, it's gonna take more than one. Man, I got frozen again. Didn't get out of there in time. All right. Wait for my shield to come back before I re-engage. Oh. Alright, so we'll go ahead and take down... Alright, we'll take the shield down. Shield didn't go down with one. I had to charge up to it. And so here's the thing is I'm sitting here for a while. And it's done do a lot against them, but they have resistance, so that's kind of typical. And even with a combo, it doesn't fully take down an Elementalist. So I'm going to go ahead and clear all these guys out, and we'll go one-on-one with the Ranger Javelin. Oh, shoot. Bad timing. Okay. Yeah, so even there it didn't do it. But now I've increased melee, and the melee on its own took them down. So we'll come in here, melee them, and then detonate. Oh, that wasn't too bad. It was like 178,000 or 79,000. So okay, we'll clear out this one last dude, and then okay, cool. So it's just me and the Ranger now. All right, so testing against their shield, and it only did about a third of their shield. So for something that's supposed to be very shield specific, that's not doing very good. So the shield's down in 3. Let's see what it does against their armor. It's not even doing 20,000 against their armor. Let's try it one more time. Yeah, I'm pretty much seeing 18,000. You can do it really close up. I even saw less there. I think I'm getting the 18,000 from the fact that I'm hitting them in the head, which is considered a weak point for them. So it doesn't do a lot of damage against them. It doesn't really take their shield down really well because they have resist. We'll let them get their shield back, and then we'll re-engage on them. So this is the way I kind of think it should be getting utilized. Is you come in, well, we'll take down their shield. So once you do get their shield down, oh no, somebody's in here. I don't know why they came in here. That sucks. We'll go ahead and exit out because there's no reason to finish this up. We kind of got a general idea of how it's gonna work. Okay, so we'll kind of talk about the gear here. So it wasn't doing a lot of damage on its own. So it's not really on its own. It's not very efficient. It really can't do a lot of stuff on its own. And then the fact that you have to charge it up, like. You have to like get the timing almost. You see how like it's kind of like right there. So it takes 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. It takes over a second to charge this up before you can even use it. So that's less time you're able to actually fully use it. Um, the damage numbers. Let me see if I can get into the forge real quick. Kind of go over it and compare it. So for damage numbers, about 9,000. Like if you're looking through here, it's not bad, but for a detonator, if we look at the rest of the detonators, it does the same stats as a relentless pursuit. The difference between those two is the masterwork perk. It does a little bit more damage than reoccurring vengeance, but reoccurring vengeance gets a charge back after detonating a combo. Is that the only? I guess that's the only technically. Yeah, relentless, recurring, and then Avenger's Boon are the only detonators. Argo's Mace does more damage, but it's only like a little. It's like what, like 3,000 more? Yeah, 2 to 3,000 more damage, and it has a little bit more of punishing recharge as well. However, the difference between these two, even though they're really not comparable because one's a detonator and one's not, is this one has a radius where this one doesn't. Technically, reoccurring vengeance doesn't either, but it seeks its target. And we saw with this one in the Argo's Mace video, it seeks targets as well. This one did not seek targets. It was, I had to be like almost right dead on them. So it does okay damage. The shield break, it's all right if you're going up against like weaker enemies, and the recharge is just kind of middle of the road. It is a detonator though, so for viability, it's definitely going to be viable because you can still detonate with it. Here's where the issue that I really have with it is striker strength. Okay, so hitting an enemy increases melee damage by 220% for 20 seconds. Got it. Cool. That sounds like it'd be very powerful. 220% for 20 seconds. That's a decent duration, and that's a good chunk of extra damage. If it applied to everything, it would be really, really good. The fact that it only applies to melee doesn't make a lot of sense. So where I'm going to show you, in case you, what I'm going to tell you here is, so the only way that would make sense to use that to get the full effect out of it is to use the Shock Mace, Transmuting Vault, to prime them, kind of like we were showcasing in the GM3, and then use this to detonate. Because that way, you're getting the perk to proc, you're getting the priming system utilized, so that way you're getting the most out of it, out of Avenger's Boon by detonating them. But here's the thing, it's kind of backwards if you really think about it. So I have another build, a melee build, and it works the exact opposite. Because I was trying to make a melee build, and I wanted to use this because the fact that it lasts for 20 seconds is really nice. And the fact that it's 220% damage is really nice for melee. The problem is you have to make a choice. You either have to melee them, do normal melee damage, which would prime them, and then use this to detonate them, but at that point they might have already died. So that kind of like, okay, well, you got the perk now, but it's kind of like backwards. It's not very efficient in that manner if you're going that route. There are other ways to do this, but I think this is a little complicated and a little bit hard to use. So basically, you're going to come in, you're going to melee them, proc the prime, detonate them. Now you're going to have striker strength for 20 seconds. And then I guess you're just going to go on to the next enemy. Oh, I didn't mean to kill that. Sorry. And now you're going to have 220% extra melee damage. Here's the thing about... Here's the problem with this one. The Transmuting Vault Shock Mace isn't really going to do a lot of damage. If you compare it to the other one, I guess they do about the same damage. However, the Masterwork perk is kind of where your difference is, where you can get 50 additional damage. So it would make more sense with this one because, like, intrinsically, this Masterwork, there's synergy, all right? So there's synergy between this Masterwork perk and Avenger's Boon's Masterwork perk. So where I would come in and hit the enemy, if I hit up to 5 enemies, I get 50% extra damage on my mace, and then I also get 220% extra damage from Striker Strength towards my mace, which is melee. So that's like 270 extra damage. Here's where I have a problem with this. Because now they're both detonators. So now you have to use something to prime them. And if you're priming them, you're probably taking a lot of the enemies down, so you're probably not getting the full effects of it. There's something that the Ranger already has that does everything better. So those enemies in there weren't very squirrely, but they can get squirrely. They can move around, jump around, and you could potentially miss because of the punishing like charge up phase. Cold blooded frost grenade does 270% melee damage, but it's at 10 seconds. But it's a primer, so I can hit an enemy type with this once I get their shield down. That's like the downside to the difference here is I have to work to get their shield down, which Avengers Boon really didn't take all their shields down all that well. It took down grunt shields really well, but when it came in, when you're going up against like resistant enemies like javelins, it doesn't take their shield down. It takes more than one charge. So now you got to sit there and charge it up. It's got to travel to hit them, and then you got to do that all over again at least 2 times, at least, from what we were seeing in GM3. So it's not going to be as nearly as efficient. Now this, obviously you got to get their shield down, so you got to figure something out. There's a lot of weapons in the game that can take shields down. And then, so there's a lot of different ways to take shields down instead of just wasting a slot to get like one piece of gear to do it. And shields are not always in the game, so not every single enemy has a shield. Here's the thing though, with the frost grenade you can hit a generalized group of enemies because it has a radius on it, so you can freeze all those enemies. Now they're not moving, so you could say, well, then why don't you use that with Avengers Boon and get like double? Well, here's the thing, you're not really getting double Strider's strength, and then like okay, so let's say I put Cold Blooded on and use Cold Blooded to freeze them, and then I detonate them with Avengers Boon. So now I've got Striker's strength. I'll have it for 20 seconds because that's the max proc. Whether or not it's the 270 or 220, that's kind of dealing with numbers. And I was trying to test around with that, and I wasn't getting like accurate details on it. Like I couldn't showcase that effectively because it was just kind of all over the place. And sometimes it would proc 2 Striker strengths. So it's kind of a weird thing going on in the game that I couldn't really reproduce. And I don't like showcasing stuff that I can't like show you how to do and guarantee that you'll get it. But let's just say for argument's sake that Striker Strength shows up. I've got 270% damage for 20 seconds. Let's just say the best of both worlds. Now my melee, I've got 270 for my melee for 20 seconds. But they've already been detonated. So it wouldn't make any sense to put on Rampager because I've already detonated them. So now I'm not going to be getting that max detonation. So it kind of doesn't make any sense because now I'm just using my melee. I guess you could go in here and but then you'd have 2 primers. And now you're just depending, like, it's too forced. I think it's too forced. I think if you want to make a melee build, and this is the way I've gone with my build, is I have a Rampager on, and then I put on Cold Blooded. So, and then I just have, like, I actually have 2 primers on. So I use Tactical Onslaught 2 to prime, so I can just keep going back and forth, so I have a ton of ways to prime. And then as long as I'm using Cold Blooded, which, you know, that's going to be our recharge and gear charges, as long as you're throwing that around a lot, 10 seconds is a long time. And it has a recharge of 11, which is a little bit punishing, but we'll talk about Cold Blooded in another video and kind of go over that build. Basically what I'm saying is it's not very efficient. Avengers Boon is not very efficient. There's better options, there's better builds, there's better ways to work with it. I'm not saying that you can't make a build around. I wouldn't suggest it. I think you're plus there's a better version of Avengers Boon here. This is a better version. We're going to go over in the next video because I think this is the very last one. I try to wait till the end of the gear showcases for that specific component or gear attachment part or whatever, till the end of that section talked about the Cataclysm ones, because almost all the Cataclysm stuff is good. Like this one does the same thing as Avengers Boon, but it does it better, and its Masterwork perk is better. So my biggest issue with Avengers Boon is its Masterwork perk. It's kind of backwards from how I think it should work, but so yeah, it's viable because it's a detonator. So anything that's going to detonate or prime, there's a place for it in a build because it still does a lot of damage and can really give you good numbers. And then is it fun? I don't think it's very fun because the timing of the charge up, even though you can get it down, any latency or anything like that is going to really cause an issue. So I don't think it's fun. I think that Relentless Pursuit is going to be more fun, and we'll go over that video next with the Ranger stuff, but this one is not. It's only viable, and it's only viable because it's a detonator. If it was just nothing, it didn't have a primer or a detonator, kind of like Argo's mace, it would be completely useless in my opinion. Like the fact that it can break shields is nice, but it doesn't make me want to use it more. Because here's the thing: okay, I would use it to take down a shield. Let's just say I could take down a shield in one shot. Okay, now I need to prime them, and then I can detonate them again, which means I'm probably going to need a couple extra charges or a build with a lot of recharge, which means I'm not going to be throwing all my inscriptions of damage and all that stuff in there because I'm going to be too focused on getting charges back or running with multiple charges instead of a lot of gear damage. Plus, I had 150 gear damage here, so like that's a pretty big number as far as damage. So if you don't get a lot of damage on yours, you might be seeing a lot smaller numbers. Me personally, I'm gonna say no. This is not a good gear piece, and if you see it in the store, I personally wouldn't waste any money on it. I would just, I wouldn't. If you want to have it to your collection just to have something of everything, by all means have that. But I don't think it's worth 2,000 coin in general. I think this kind of falls along with Argo's mace, even though it is viable. It's not doing significant amount of damage. The recharge is kind of whatever. And there's two things in the game that the Ranger has that do a better job than what it does for the Masterwork perk, or it's just its basic purpose. So I don't know. I've been going on for a long time and ranting about it. I've been trying to make a build out of this, and it hasn't worked too well. But I'm going to end the video here. So I'm Defeated Rescue. I hope to see you guys out in Bastion.